owner said that his German Shepherd was just being silly. When the vet realized the truth, he screamed, "Call the police!" A tired vet thinks he's dealing with just another sick dog, until he looks at the scan. The owner laughs it off, saying his German Shepherd is just being silly. But the vet sees something that makes his blood run cold. Inside the dog's stomach is something no animal should ever have. Something ticking. Suddenly, the quiet clinic turns into a race against danger. A young officer rushes in, the terrified dog whimpers on the table, and the owner can't explain how this happened. But someone out there knows, someone dangerous, and whatever is inside that dog, it wasn't put there by accident. As pressure builds, lives hang in the balance, and a hidden threat begins to reveal itself. What did the vet see on that screen? And why would someone turn an innocent dog into a weapon? I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below, and while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. Dr. Colin Mercer rubbed his tired eyes as he glanced at the clock on the clinic wall. 8:45 in the evening. The last appointment had left 30 minutes ago, and he'd just finished updating patient records. His shoulders ached from a long day of examining pets, but satisfaction warmed his heart, knowing he'd helped so many animals feel better. The gentle hum of the clinic's fluorescent lights filled the quiet space as he began his closing routine. Just as he was reaching to switch off his computer, the front door burst open with a bang that made him jump. "Doc, you gotta help!" A heavy-set man in a trucker's cap stumbled in, struggling to control a large German Shepherd who was whimpering and pulling against his leash. The dog's amber eyes were wide with distress, his powerful body trembling. "Please, come in," Colin said, instantly alert despite his fatigue. "I'm Dr. Mercer. What seems to be the problem?" "Name's Randall Pierce," the man panted, his face flushed from the effort of restraining the dog. "This here's Ranger. He's been acting weird all day. Won't eat, keeps whining, can't settle down. But he's probably just being silly, right?" Randall forced a laugh that didn't reach his tired eyes. Colin knelt slowly, giving the German Shepherd space while observing his behavior. Ranger's ears were pinned back, his tail tucked low. The dog's breathing came in quick, shallow pants, and he kept looking around the room as if searching for escape routes. "How long has he been like this?" Colin asked, keeping his voice calm and professional while his instincts screamed that something was seriously wrong. These weren't typical anxiety symptoms. The dog's distress seemed deeper, more urgent. Just since this morning," Randall said quickly. Too quickly. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, not meeting Colin's eyes. "Like I said, he's probably just worked up over nothing. Maybe we should just head home." "Let's take a proper look at him first," Colin insisted gently but firmly. "These symptoms concern me. Would you mind bringing him into exam room too?" He gestured towards the door, noting how Randall's face tightened with worry. Inside the exam room, Colin tried to approach Ranger, but the dog shied away, pressing against the wall. His whole body trembled violently. "See, just being dramatic?" Randall said with another forced laugh. "We shouldn't waste your time." "Mr. Pierce," Colin said carefully, "I've been a veterinarian for 12 years. This level of distress isn't normal. I need to do a proper examination to rule out any serious issues." "He doesn't need all that," Randall protested, his voice rising slightly. "Just give him some calming pills or something." Colin took a slow breath, maintaining his professional demeanor while anxiety churned in his stomach. Something about this situation felt wrong. Very wrong. "I understand you're concerned about your dog, but I can't properly treat him without examining him first. Would you help me get him up on the exam table?" Reluctantly, Randall lifted the large Shepherd onto the table. Ranger's nails scraped against the metal surface as he tried to maintain his footing, still trembling. As Colin ran his hands carefully over the dog's body, he felt unusual tension in the abdomen. "I'd like to do an ultrasound," Colin said, keeping his voice steady despite Randall's visible agitation. "It's non-invasive and will help us understand what's causing his discomfort." "No," Randall blurted, then quickly composed himself. "I mean, that seems unnecessary and expensive. He's fine, really." Colin stood his ground, though his heart was pounding. "Mr. Pierce, I'm genuinely worried about Ranger's condition. The ultrasound is essential for proper diagnosis. I'm happy to discuss payment options if that's a concern." Randall's face had gone pale, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. After a long moment, he nodded stiffly. "Fine. Do it quick." Colin retrieved the ultrasound machine, trying to keep his movements calm and deliberate despite the tension in the room. As he spread the gel on Ranger's abdomen, the dog whimpered softly. "Easy, boy," Colin murmured. "We'll figure out what's wrong." The image appeared on the screen, and Colin's blood ran cold. Among the normal shadows of organs and tissue, several distinct shapes stood out, geometric, clearly artificial, with the bright reflection characteristic of metal. They were capsules of some kind, and they didn't belong there. Colin kept his face carefully neutral as he moved the probe, counting at least 3 separate objects. His mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. These weren't any medical devices he recognized. "Everything okay, Doc?" Randall's voice was tight with barely contained panic. "Mr. Pierce," Colin said slowly, still watching the screen. "I'm seeing some concerning abnormalities. We need to discuss." "We need to go," Randall cut him off, reaching for Ranger's leash. "Now." "Sir, please," Colin started, but Randall was already pulling the distressed shepherd off the table. The dog's nails scrabbled against the floor as he was dragged toward the door. "Thanks for your time, Doc," Randall called over his shoulder, his voice shaking. "Send me the bill." Colin stood frozen beside the ultrasound machine, its screen still showing the damning evidence of something very wrong. As the front door slammed shut, he could hear Ranger's anxious whimpers fading into the night. The empty exam room felt suddenly cold, and the weight of what he'd discovered settled heavily on his shoulders. He looked down at his hands, realizing they were trembling slightly. In 12 years of veterinary practice, he'd never seen anything like those metallic shapes inside Ranger's body. Whatever was going on, that dog needed help, and somehow Colin knew this night was far from over. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he stood there. The image of those strange capsules burned into his mind. Something told him he should call someone. The police, perhaps. But what would he say? That he'd seen suspicious metal objects inside a dog whose owner had fled the clinic? It sounded absurd, even to him. Yet he couldn't shake the memory of Ranger's desperate eyes, or the way Randall had practically run away when the ultrasound revealed its secrets. The professional part of him worried about the dog's health and safety, while another part, one he usually kept safely buried under routine and protocol, whispered that he'd stumbled onto something dangerous. The quiet of the clinic pressed in around him as he saved the ultrasound images to the computer system, his movements mechanical, while his mind churned with questions. What were those objects? Why had they been placed inside Ranger? And what was he supposed to do now? Colin turned back to the ultrasound machine, his fingers trembling as he rewound the captured footage. Something about those metallic shapes nagged at him. They weren't just static objects. He leaned closer to the screen, adjusting the settings to enhance the image quality. "What in the world?" he muttered, his heart beginning to race. The capsules weren't merely reflecting the ultrasound waves. They were emitting their own distinct pattern, a rhythmic pulsing that couldn't be natural. As he studied the waveform more closely, His professional curiosity gave way to growing alarm. The regular mechanical nature of the signal became impossible to ignore. It wasn't random interference or equipment malfunction. The devices inside Ranger were active, functioning, and keeping time. Tick, tick, tick. The sound hadn't been obvious at first, masked by the normal ambient noise of the clinic. But now that he was paying attention, Colin could hear it clearly. A faint but steady ticking coming from Ranger's direction. His mouth went dry as the implications hit him. "Oh God," he whispered, stumbling backward. This wasn't some bizarre case of a dog swallowing junk or even illegal smuggling. This was something far worse. His hand shot out, smacking the panic alarm button mounted near the door. The sharp electronic buzz filled the clinic as red warning lights began to flash. "Everyone out!" he shouted to his remaining staff. "Clear the building now!" Randall lurched to his feet, his face ashen. "What are you doing?" he demanded, voice cracking. "Call the police," Colin ordered his receptionist as she appeared in the doorway. "Tell them we need immediate assistance. Possible explosive device." The last words felt surreal coming from his mouth, but there was no time to question it. The receptionist's eyes went wide, but she nodded and rushed to the phone. Colin could hear her voice, tight with controlled panic, as she spoke to emergency dispatch. "You can't do this," Randall pleaded, moving towards the door. "You don't understand." "Don't move," Colin said firmly, surprising himself with the authority in his voice. "That dog needs help, and you're going to explain exactly what's going on here." Minutes that felt like hours crawled by, until the sound of sirens cut through the night. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows as police vehicles surrounded the clinic. Officer Tessa Holcomb was the first through the door, her hand resting on her weapon as she quickly assessed the scene. "Status?" she demanded crisply, her dark eyes taking in every detail. Colin gestured to the ultrasound screen. "I've got a German Shepherd with multiple active devices surgically implanted in his abdomen. They're emitting a regular signal, and there's an audible ticking sound. I believe we're dealing with some kind of explosive trigger or detonator." Officer Holcomb's expression hardened as she processed this information. "Everyone out," she ordered, speaking into her radio to call for backup and the bomb squad. "Clear the building immediately." "Wait," Colin interjected. "The dog needs immediate medical attention. Those devices are causing internal trauma. If we don't act soon—" "Doctor, this is now a potential explosive threat," Holcomb cut him off. "We need to evacuate and let the specialists—" "There isn't time," Colin insisted, gesturing to Ranger's increasingly distressed state. "Look at him. Whatever those devices are doing, they're hurting him. And if they are explosive components, leaving them in there is just as dangerous as trying to remove them." Officer Holcomb studied him for a long moment, then nodded sharply. "What do you need?" "I need to sedate him and prep for emergency surgery. But first—" Colin turned to Randall, who had pressed himself against the wall, looking trapped. "Mr. Pierce needs to tell us exactly what we're dealing with here." Randall's face crumpled. "They'll kill my family," he whispered. "My ex-wife, my son. They said they'd hurt them if I didn't cooperate." "Who?" Officer Holcomb demanded. "Who threatened you?" "I don't know their real names," Randall said, his voice shaking. "They approached me at a truck stop 3 weeks ago, said they knew where my boy lived, showed me pictures of him at school. They had someone perform surgery on Ranger while I was making a delivery, said he was now carrying something important, and I had to get him to specific locations at specific times." Colin was already preparing a sedative injection as he listened. "The devices? Do you know what they are? What they're for?" "Some kind of trigger mechanism, that's all I know," Randall replied, wiping at his eyes. "They said Ranger was just one piece of a bigger plan. Something about coordinated detonation across multiple sites." Officer Holcomb spoke rapidly into her radio, relaying this new information, while Colin carefully administered the sedative to Ranger. The German Shepherd's eyes were full of trust as the drug took effect, and Colin felt a surge of protective determination. "I need surgical assistance," he said, looking up at Officer Holcomb. "Someone with steady hands who can follow instructions precisely." She holstered her weapon and stripped off her jacket. "I did 4 years as a combat medic before joining the force," she said, rolling up her sleeves. "Tell me what you need." As they began prepping for surgery, Colin could hear the controlled chaos outside as more emergency vehicles arrived and the area was secured. But his world had narrowed to the operating table, where an innocent animal's life hung in the balance, along with who knew how many others if they couldn't safely remove whatever deadly cargo had been hidden inside him. The ticking continued, steady and ominous, as Colin made the first incision. Whatever happened next would depend on steady hands, quick thinking, and more than a little luck. He just hoped they had enough of all three. The operating room hummed with tense energy as Colin and Officer Holcomb worked methodically. The harsh fluorescent lights cast stark shadows across Ranger's sedated form, while the steady beep of monitoring equipment provided a counterpoint to the ominous ticking from within the dog's abdomen. "I need you to hold this retractor exactly as I show you," Colin instructed, demonstrating the position. "Steady pressure, don't let it slip." Tessa nodded, her hands sure and confident as she took control of the instrument. "Like this?" "Perfect." Colin dabbed away excess fluid, his surgical mask hiding his frown of concentration. "Your combat medic experience is showing." "Afghanistan, 2 tours," she replied quietly, eyes fixed on their task. "Never thought those skills would come in handy at a veterinary clinic." Through the initial incision, Colin could now see the first of the foreign objects. It was roughly the size of a large vitamin capsule, its metallic surface reflecting the operating lights. Thin wires connected it to what appeared to be other components deeper in the abdominal cavity. "This is definitely not standard veterinary equipment," he muttered, carefully probing the surrounding tissue. "The placement is precise. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Professional surgical work." Tessa's eyes narrowed. "That makes this even worse. We're not dealing with amateurs." In the corner of the room, Randall Pierce sat slumped in a chair, a uniformed officer standing guard. His face was ashen, hands trembling as he watched the procedure. "Mr. Pierce," Colin called out, not taking his eyes off his work. "Now would be a very good time to tell us everything you know about who did this." Randall's voice cracked. They approached me at the Flying J truck stop outside of Memphis. 2 men. One had a tablet showing live video of my son Tommy getting off the school bus. They knew his schedule, knew where my ex-wife Jenny works. "Focus on the details about Ranger," Tessa prompted firmly. "When did they operate on him?" 3 weeks ago. They made me drive to this warehouse district in Atlanta. There was a setup inside. Looked like a real medical facility. They had someone in scrubs, surgical masks. They kept me in another room, but I could hear Ranger yelping. Randall's voice broke. When they brought him out, they said he'd heal quick, that I just needed to follow their instructions about where to take him and when. Colin carefully clamped off a small blood vessel before continuing his delicate dissection around the device. "The ticking. When did that start?" "Yesterday morning. They said it was supposed to happen, that I needed to get him to specific coordinates by tomorrow night or—" Randall swallowed hard. "Or they'd hurt Tommy." "Suction here, please," Colin murmured to Tessa, who smoothly cleared his field of view. The main capsule was almost fully exposed now, its surface etched with microscopic patterns that seemed to pulse with barely visible light. "I'm going to attempt to disconnect it from the surrounding components," he announced. "Officer Holcomb, I need you to be ready with the lead-lined container." Tessa nodded to her partner by the door, who brought over a heavy metal box marked with radiation symbols. "Ready when you are, Doctor," Colin took a deep breath, acutely aware that the next few moments could determine life or death for everyone in the building. With precise movements, he began separating the capsule from its connecting wires, using micro-scissors to snip each connection after carefully marking its position. The ticking suddenly increased in tempo. "That's not good," Tessa said tersely. "Almost there," Colin muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. "Just 2 more connections." The final wire came free with a tiny spark, and Colin gently lifted the capsule clear of Ranger's abdomen. The ticking grew louder, more insistent. "Container now," he ordered, and Tessa smoothly presented the lead box. Colin carefully placed the device inside, and she snapped the lid shut. The ticking became muffled, but didn't stop. "Get that out of here," Tessa commanded, and her partner quickly but carefully carried the container outside where the bomb squad was waiting. Colin returned his attention to Ranger's surgery, methodically removing the remaining components, 5 smaller capsules connected by a network of fine wires. Each one went into a separate evidence container, handled with extreme care. As he began closing the surgical site, Tessa stepped closer to examine one of the smaller capsules under a strong light. "This isn't just some crude explosive trigger," she said quietly. "Look at the engineering. These are precision-manufactured components, multiple redundancies, sophisticated circuitry." "This was never just about one dog, was it?" Colin asked, tying off another suture. Before Tessa could answer, Randall broke down completely. "They said Ranger was just one piece," he sobbed. "They talked about other dogs, other drivers, something about synchronized timing and maximum impact. I didn't want to help them, but Tommy, my little boy—" "Mr. Pierce," Tessa said firmly, "I need you to tell me exactly how many other drivers you saw at that warehouse. Think carefully." 4, maybe 5 others. They all had dogs with them. Different breeds, different sizes. They were processing them through one at a time, over several days. Colin finished the last suture and began applying the surgical dressing. Multiple dogs, multiple locations, synchronized detonation. He looked up at Tessa. "This is way bigger than a small-town vet clinic, isn't it?" "Way bigger," she agreed grimly, already pulling out her phone. "I need to make some calls. This just became a major terrorist threat investigation." As she stepped away to contact her superiors, Colin gently stroked Ranger's fur, monitoring his vital signs as he recovered from anesthesia. The German Shepherd's eyes fluttered open, still glazed from the sedation but showing recognition as they focused on Colin's face. "You're going to be okay, boy," Colin murmured. "We got those nasty things out of you." Randall's guard suddenly spoke up. "Officer Holcomb, the bomb squad wants you outside. They've found something in that main capsule you need to see." Tessa returned, her face grave. "Dr. Mercer, I need you to secure your clinic and prepare to evacuate if necessary. Mr. Pierce, you're coming with us. We need everything you can remember about that warehouse and the people you saw there." "What about Ranger?" Colin asked. "He stays here under guard. He's evidence now and he'll need medical monitoring anyway." She paused at the door. "Doctor, thank you. Your quick thinking and surgical skill just helped us stumble onto something very serious. We'll need your expertise again before this is over." Colin nodded, turning back to his patient as Tessa led a still-shaking Randall Pierce outside. The quiet of the operating room felt strange now without the ticking sound they'd grown accustomed to. But somehow, the silence felt more ominous than the ticking had been, as if it were just a temporary pause before something much worse began. The bomb squad's initial analysis came back within hours. Tessa stood in the clinic's break room, spreading documents across the table while Colin made a fresh pot of coffee. It was well past midnight, but neither of them could think about sleep. "The engineering signature is unmistakable," Tessa explained, pointing to detailed photos of the device they'd removed from Ranger. This level of sophistication narrows it down to a handful of known weapons manufacturers, most of them overseas. But the components... She pulled out another photo, this one showing microscopic markings on one of the circuit boards. These are special. They're tagged with a unique identifier that we've seen before. Colin leaned in closer, squinting at the tiny serial numbers. Who would have access to something like this? That's where it gets interesting. Tessa pulled up another file on her laptop. These components were part of a legitimate shipment of industrial timing devices imported by Klein Freight Solutions 3 months ago. The company's owner, Vernon Klein, reported the entire shipment stolen during transit. But you don't believe it was really stolen? Colin guessed, pouring 2 cups of coffee. No, we think it was a cover story. Tessa accepted the coffee gratefully. Vernon Klein has been on our radar for years, but he's careful, very careful. His company handles everything from small packages to major industrial freight across 6 states. Perfect cover for moving illegal goods. The break room door opened, and 2 plainclothes detectives entered with Randall Pierce between them. The truck driver looked exhausted, his face pale and drawn, but there was determination in his eyes now. Mr. Pierce has agreed to make a full statement, one of the detectives announced, and he's remembered some important details about the warehouse operation. They all sat down at the table while Randall spoke, his voice shaky but clear. It wasn't just random. They had a system. Each driver had specific routes, specific checkpoints we had to pass through. The dogs... He glanced toward the recovery kennels where Ranger was resting. They weren't just carrying the triggers. They were like mobile timing devices, programmed to activate when they passed certain locations. How many total dogs are we talking about? Tessa asked. I saw 6 others besides Ranger. Different breeds, different sizes. They wanted them to look natural, like normal pets riding with their owners. Randall's hands trembled as he reached for a tissue. But there was something bigger. I overheard 2 of the guards talking about a main device, something already loaded on a truck, headed for the Riverside fuel terminal. The detectives exchanged alarmed looks. Tessa quickly pulled up a map on her laptop. The terminal supplies fuel for half the state. If they hit that, the explosion would be catastrophic, Colin finished, and with multiple triggers approaching from different directions. They could detonate it remotely without ever getting near the site themselves, Tessa said. Clever, evil, but clever. One of the detectives was already on his phone, calling in the information. The other turned to Randall. We need everything you can remember about the warehouse. Layout, security, personnel, vehicles, anything that could help us locate it. While Randall worked with a sketch artist, Tessa pulled up more information about Vernon Klein. The man's photograph showed a polished, distinguished-looking executive in his mid-50s, the kind of person who exuded authority and respectability. He's built quite an empire, Tessa explained to Colin. Started with 2 trucks 20 years ago. Now he has one of the largest private freight networks in the region. Donations to charity, sits on multiple boards, friend to politicians. The perfect cover. But why? Colin asked. Why risk all that with something like this? Money, power, the usual reasons. Tessa scrolled through more files. We think he's been using his legitimate business to hide a massive smuggling operation. Weapons, drugs, explosives, anything that pays well enough. But lately, there have been rumors he's gotten involved with some very dangerous international players. The detective ended his phone call and rejoined them. We've got teams mobilizing to search for the bomb truck, but we need more. Mr. Pierce, would you be willing to wear a wire? Try to make contact with your handlers. See if we can get more specific information. Randall's face went white. They'll kill me. And my family. We've already moved your ex-wife and son to a safe location, the detective assured him. They're under 24-hour protection, but we need your help to stop this before people die. After a long moment, Randall nodded slowly. Okay, I'll do it. but I want something in return." He looked toward the kennels. "When this is over, I want immunity. And I want Ranger back. He's a good dog. He didn't ask for any of this." "We'll do our best," Tessa promised. "But first, we need to focus on stopping that bomb." Over the next hour, they worked out the details of the operation. Randall would contact his handlers, claiming he needed to check on Ranger's condition. The hope was that the criminals' own arrogance would work against them. They might want to verify that their expensive device hadn't been discovered during the vet visit. Colin found himself drawn into the planning as well. If they do come to check, they'll expect to see evidence of the examination I supposedly did. I can create a fake chart, make it look like I just treated Ranger for stomach upset. "Good thinking," Tessa said. "The more natural everything appears, the better chance we have of drawing them out." As they finalized the preparations, Colin went to check on Ranger. The German Shepherd was recovering well from surgery, alert and responsive. When Colin approached the kennel, Ranger's tail wagged slightly. "You're quite a hero, you know that?" Colin said softly, slipping his hand through the kennel bars to scratch behind Ranger's ears. "Thanks to you, we might be able to stop something terrible from happening." "Dr. Mercer?" Tessa appeared in the doorway. "We've got movement. One of Klein's security teams just left their compound, heading this way. Looks like they took the bait." Colin gave Ranger a final pat and stood up. "What do you need me to do?" "Just act natural. Treat them like any other client coming to check on their dog. We'll have teams in position, but we can't risk spooking them too early." She touched his arm briefly. "Be careful. These people are professionals, and they're dangerous." Colin nodded, straightening his lab coat and trying to calm his racing heart. In vet school, they'd never covered anything like this. How to act normal while helping the police prevent a terrorist bombing. But as he thought about the destruction these people were planning, about the lives at stake, he felt a strange sense of clarity. This was about protecting the innocent, both human and animal. And that was exactly what he'd sworn to do when he became a veterinarian. Colin watched anxiously as the technician fitted Randall with the concealed microphone, carefully taping wires against his chest and adjusting the miniature transmitter. The trucker's hands trembled slightly as he buttoned his flannel shirt back up. "Testing, testing," Randall spoke softly. "Can you hear me okay?" In the surveillance van parked a block away, Tessa adjusted her headphones and nodded to the audio specialist. "Coming through clear. Remember, just act natural. Ask about Ranger like we discussed. Don't try to push for information about the bomb. Let them bring it up if they're going to." Colin sat beside her in the cramped van, surrounded by monitors and recording equipment. Though he had no official role in the operation now, he'd insisted on staying involved. Something about seeing those metallic capsules inside Ranger had changed everything. He couldn't just go back to his normal routine, knowing what these people were planning. "The depot's just up ahead," the surveillance tech announced, checking his GPS display. "Mr. Pierce, you're clear to proceed." Randall's truck rumbled to life. Through the van's monitors, they watched him navigate through the industrial district. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows between warehouses and storage facilities. Other vehicles from the task force maintained discreet positions nearby. Unmarked cars with plainclothes officers, delivery vans concealing tactical teams. "Approaching the gate now," Randall's voice crackled through the speakers. They could hear the stress in his tone, though he was clearly trying to keep it under control. The security checkpoint came into view on their monitors, a guard booth beside heavy steel gates bearing the Klein Freight Solutions logo. Randall exchanged a few words with the guard, who made a call before waving him through. "He's in," Tessa murmured, leaning forward. Everyone maintained positions. The depot's interior was a hive of activity, trucks being loaded and unloaded, forklifts moving between warehouses, workers going about their seemingly legitimate business. Randall parked where directed and climbed down from his cab. "Mr. Pierce." The smooth voice made them all tense. Vernon Klein himself appeared on their monitors, walking toward Randall with the unhurried confidence of a man completely in control. "I understand you had some trouble with your dog earlier today?" "Yes, sir," Randall replied, managing to keep his voice steady. "The vet said it was probably just an upset stomach, but I wanted to check in, make sure everything was still okay." Klein smiled, gesturing for Randall to walk with him. "Very conscientious of you. We do value attention to detail in our operators. Come, let's discuss this somewhere more private." They watched as Klein led Randall toward one of the smaller office buildings. The freight magnate moved with casual grace, his expensive suit immaculate despite the industrial setting. Nothing in his manner suggested a man orchestrating a terrorist plot. "Running facial recognition now," the tech reported quietly, confirming known associates in the vicinity. Photos began populating a secondary screen. Security personnel, mechanics, office staff. Many had criminal records or suspicious gaps in their backgrounds. Inside Klein's office, the crime boss settled behind his desk, while Randall perched nervously on a visitor's chair. "So, tell me about this veterinary visit," Klein said. "Any unusual observations?" "No, sir," Randall said. "Like I said, the doc just thought it was stomach trouble. Gave him some medicine, said to watch his diet." "And this veterinarian, Dr. Mercer, was it? He didn't notice anything extraordinary during his examination?" Colin felt his chest tighten at the mention of his name. Beside him, Tessa tensed. "No, sir," Randall insisted. "Real basic checkup. Didn't even do any x-rays or nothing." Klein was silent for a moment, studying Randall with cold eyes. "I see. Well, we should probably verify that everything is still in order. Johnson?" A burly man in workers' coveralls appeared in the doorway. "Boss? Have someone bring truck number 47 around to Bay 3. I believe we should do a thorough inspection, just to be certain." In the surveillance van, the tech quickly pulled up information. "Truck 47. Checking manifests?" "Sir, that vehicle's scheduled for delivery to the fuel terminal tomorrow morning." "That's it," Tessa breathed. "That's got to be the bomb truck." She keyed her radio. "All units, prepare to move on my mark. Target vehicle being brought to Bay 3. They watched as a semi-truck backed into the loading bay. Klein led Randall out to observe as his men began a show of inspecting the cargo. Colin could see the tension in the trucker's shoulders, knowing one wrong move could give everything away. "Now," Tessa commanded. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Tactical teams burst from their concealed positions. Unmarked cars screeched into the depot. Officers in tactical gear swarmed the loading bay, weapons trained on Klein and his men. "Police! Everyone on the ground!" For a moment, chaos reigned. Workers scattered. Klein's security personnel reached for weapons but found themselves badly outnumbered. The freight magnate himself remained eerily calm, raising his hands with almost theatrical slowness. "This is a mistake," he said smoothly. "I run a legitimate business here. Whatever you think you found—" "Secure the truck," Tessa ordered, jumping down from the van. Colin followed, heart pounding as he watched the bomb squad approach the vehicle. After what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, the all-clear came through. The bomb squad had located and temporarily neutralized the explosive device's trigger mechanism. The truck was secure. Colin felt weak with relief. They'd done it. They'd actually managed to stop the attack before it could happen. Around him, officers were securing suspects, documenting evidence, beginning the long process of unraveling Klein's criminal enterprise. Randall stood off to one side, looking shell-shocked as a technician removed his wire. When he saw Colin, he managed a shaky smile. We really did it, didn't we, Doc? We did, Colin agreed. You were very brave. Ranger, Randall said suddenly. Is he really okay? All this, it wasn't just for the operation? He's doing fine, Colin assured him. Recovering well. Once things settle down here, we can arrange for you to see him. Tessa joined them, looking pleased but professional. Good work, both of you. Mr. Pierce, we'll need you to come in for a formal statement. Dr. Mercer, thank you for your assistance. We'll be in touch if we need anything else. As the scene continued to unfold around them, evidence being catalogued, suspects being processed, vehicles being searched, Colin felt an immense sense of satisfaction. What had started as a routine veterinary emergency had led to the prevention of a major terrorist attack. Sometimes the most important moments in life came disguised as ordinary days. He watched as Klein was led away in handcuffs, the crime boss's composed facade finally showing cracks of anger and frustration. Whatever his ultimate plans had been, they'd been stopped here, thanks to the combined efforts of law enforcement, a brave trucker, and one very special German shepherd. Colin watched the organized chaos of the police operation unfold around him. Officers methodically cataloged evidence while forensics teams combed through the depot. The initial euphoria of their successful raid was beginning to fade, replaced by the steady rhythm of professional law enforcement work. Tessa stood at a makeshift command center, reviewing preliminary reports with sharp attention. Her brow furrowed as she flipped through documents, something clearly troubling her. Colin noticed her expression darken as she cross-referenced different papers. Something's not adding up, she muttered, spreading several manifests across the table. These routing numbers, they don't match our intelligence. Detective Mark Ellery approached, his weathered face projecting calm authority. Everything all right, Officer Holcomb? These manifests, sir, Tessa said, pointing to the discrepancies. The truck numbers don't align with what our surveillance showed last week, and these shipping routes, they're completely different from what our informant provided. Preliminary intelligence is often unreliable, Ellery said dismissively. We got Klein in the truck. That's what matters. But Tessa wasn't satisfied. She pulled up additional files on her laptop, comparing timestamps and locations. Detective, look at this. The GPS data from our initial surveillance shows multiple trucks leaving the depot at 3 o'clock in the morning, but these official logs only show one departure. Colin moved closer, drawn by the intensity in her voice. He'd learned to trust Tessa's instincts during their brief but intense collaboration. Where are the reports from the surveillance team that was watching the north entrance? Tessa asked, shuffling through papers. Ellery shrugged. Those units were reassigned. Manpower issues. We had to concentrate our resources. Reassigned? When? Why wasn't I notified? Tessa's voice carried an edge now. She pulled up another file, her fingers flying across the keyboard. And what about the tip about the fuel terminal? The original intel mentioned multiple target locations, but I can't find those reports anywhere. I streamlined the investigation, Ellery said firmly. Too many leads can muddy the waters. We focused on the most credible threat. Colin watched as Tessa's expression shifted from confusion to dawning suspicion. She opened another window on her laptop, this one showing Ranger's veterinary records. The GPS chip we found in Ranger, she said slowly. It wasn't just a tracking device. It was part of some kind of activation sequence, and according to these logs... Her voice trailed off as color drained from her face. What is it? Colin asked, stepping closer. The chip sent out a signal burst earlier today before we removed it. I thought it was just interference from our equipment, but... She looked up at Ellery, her eyes hard. Detective, why did you redirect the surveillance team from the north entrance exactly 20 minutes after this signal was transmitted? Ellery's facade of calm professionalism cracked for just a moment, a slight tightening around his eyes, a minimal tension in his jaw. But it was enough. Tessa was on, her feet in an instant, her hand moving toward her weapon. "This truck is a decoy," she announced, her voice carrying across the depot. "And you knew it all along." "Officer Holcomb, you're letting imagination run away with—" Ellery began, but Tessa cut him off. "The real shipment went out the north entrance this morning," she continued, "right after Ranger's chip activated some kind of sequence. That's why you diverted our surveillance. That's why these manifests don't match. You've been working for Klein this entire time." The depot erupted into motion. Officers turned toward the confrontation, hands moving to weapons. Ellery's mask of authority fell away completely, replaced by something cold and calculating. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," he growled. "That truck's already halfway to its target. Even if you figure out where it's headed, you'll never reach it in time." "The signal from Ranger's chip," Colin interjected, pieces falling into place. "It wasn't just an activation sequence, was it? It was part of the detonation chain. The bomb's already armed." Ellery's smile was utterly without warmth. "Smart boy. Klein always has a backup plan. Always. You really think we'd put all our eggs in one basket?" "Where's the truck headed?" Tessa demanded, her weapon now drawn and aimed steadily at Ellery's chest. Other officers moved to surround him. "You've lost," Ellery said simply. "By the time you figure it out, that truck will have reached its destination, and there won't be anything left to figure out." As officers moved in to handcuff the corrupt detective, Tessa was already in motion, barking orders into her radio. "This is Officer Holcomb. We have confirmation of a second vehicle, armed and en route to target. I need all available units to begin searching northbound routes. The bomb is active. Repeat, the bomb is active." She turned to Colin, her face tight with urgency. "We need to figure out exactly what that signal from Ranger's chip did. It might be our only chance of stopping this thing before it's too late." Colin nodded, already pulling out his phone to access the clinic's records. Around them, the depot had transformed from a crime scene into a center of frantic activity, as law enforcement scrambled to locate the real threat that had slipped through their fingers. The captured truck, their supposed victory, sat mockingly empty in the loading bay. Nothing more than a carefully crafted distraction in Klein's deadly game of misdirection. Ellery's demeanor shifted like a storm cloud, blocking out the sun. "Officer Holcomb, you're making serious accusations against a superior officer. I suggest you stand down." "No," Tessa said firmly, her hand still on her weapon. "This ends now. You're going to tell us where that truck is headed." The corrupt detective's face hardened. "Actually, both of you need to come with me. We've received credible evidence linking you to Klein's operation." He pulled out his badge with one hand, while reaching for his handcuffs with the other. "You're both under arrest for conspiracy and obstruction of justice." Colin's heart hammered in his chest. "That's ridiculous. We're the ones who discovered—" "Shut up," Ellery snapped. "Get in the car, now. We'll sort this out at a secure location." Tessa's eyes narrowed. "There's no warrant, no probable cause. This isn't procedure." "Last warning," Ellery growled, drawing his weapon. "Car, now." With guns trained on them, Colin and Tessa had no choice but to comply. Ranger, who had been staying close to Colin throughout the confrontation, let out a low growl but remained steady at Colin's side. Ellery forced them into his unmarked police vehicle, confiscating their phones. They drove for 20 minutes, leaving the city behind. The car turned onto a narrow road, leading to what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse complex. Colin's stomach churned as he realized how isolated they were. "Some safe house," Tessa said sarcastically as Ellery marched them inside. "Does Internal Affairs know about this location?" "You always were too smart for your own good," Ellery replied, shoving them into a dusty office space. "Just like your mother. Neither of you know when to look the other way." Through grimy windows, Colin spotted two black SUVs pulling into the lot. His heart sank as several armed men emerged, led by Vernon Cline himself. "You son of a—" Tessa lunged at Ellery, but he was ready for her. The detective slammed her against the wall, pressing his forearm against her throat. "I tried to do this the easy way," he snarled. "Could have made it look like a simple accident, but you just had to keep digging." Colin moved to help Tessa, but Ellery swung his gun toward him. "Stay back, Doc. This doesn't have to get messy." Ranger's growl deepened, his muscles tensing as he positioned himself between Colin and the threat. The German Shepherd's protective instincts were in full force now. The door opened, and Vernon Cline stepped in, flanked by 2 guards. His expensive suit looked out of place in the decrepit building. "Detective Ellery, I see our problem hasn't been resolved yet." "It's under control," Ellery insisted. "Is it?" Cline's cold eyes swept over the scene. "Because from where I'm standing, we have 2 loose ends who know far too much about our operation. The truck is nearly in position. We can't afford any complications now." The implied threat hung heavy in the air. Colin's mind raced, searching for a way out. Tessa was still pinned, but her eyes were alert, scanning the room. Ranger remained coiled like a spring, waiting. What happened next unfolded in a blur of motion and sound. A piece of rotted ceiling crashed down, startling everyone. In that split second, Tessa drove her knee up, catching Ellery in a vulnerable spot. He stumbled back, his gun discharging into the ceiling. Ranger exploded into action, launching himself at the nearest guard. The man's weapon went flying as 100 pounds of trained German Shepherd knocked him off his feet. Tessa seized her chance, diving for Ellery's dropped weapon. Cline's second guard opened fire, sending everyone scrambling for cover as windows shattered in a spray of glass. Colin rolled behind a heavy desk, heart pounding so hard he could barely hear over it. "Tessa!" he shouted, seeing her pinned down behind a filing cabinet as bullets sparked off metal around her. Through the chaos, Ranger somehow made it to Colin's side, pressing against him protectively while snarling at any movement from their attackers. The dog's presence gave Colin a surge of courage. "The door!" Tessa yelled, pointing to a side exit partially hidden behind shelving. "Cover me!" She fired several shots, forcing Cline and his men to duck. Colin seized his chance, grabbing a heavy paperweight from the desk and hurling it through a window on the opposite side of the room. The crash drew their attackers' attention just long enough. "Ranger, go!" Colin commanded. The German Shepherd understood, racing to the door ahead of them. Tessa laid down more covering fire as she and Colin sprinted for the exit. They burst out into the afternoon sun, hearing shouts and footsteps close behind. "My car's on the west side!" Tessa gasped as they ran. "If we can—" More gunfire erupted, forcing them to dive behind a dumpster. Ranger stayed with them, his body tense and alert, ready to defend his humans. Through a gap, Colin could see Ellery and one of Cline's men moving to flank their position. The corrupt detective's face was a mask of cold fury as he coordinated with the armed thug, all pretense of law enforcement procedure abandoned. "There's no way out," Ellery called out. "Give yourselves up now, and maybe we can still work something out." "Like you worked things out with Cline," Tessa shot back. "How long have you been on his payroll, Mark? How many other crimes did you help him cover up?" "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Ellery growled. "Cline owns half this city. The smart ones learn to play along." "My mother was right about you," Tessa said. "She always said you were dirty. That's why she passed you over for promotion 3 times. A bullet pinged off the dumpster near Tessa's head. "Your mother's self-righteous attitude nearly ruined everything," Ellery snarled. "Just like you're trying to do now." Colin spotted movement in his peripheral vision. Cline and his other guard were trying to circle around behind them. They were about to be trapped. Ranger suddenly perked up, his ears forward. A distant sound was growing louder, sirens, multiple vehicles getting closer. Backup's coming, Tessa said with grim satisfaction. I activated my emergency beacon before you took our phones. Every available unit in the district is headed this way. Then we'll finish this quickly, Ellery replied. The menace in his voice sent chills down Colin's spine. The afternoon sun cast long shadows as Tessa's police cruiser wound through narrow back roads, each turn taking them further from the city center. Colin sat in the passenger seat, one hand resting on Ranger's head in the back. The German Shepherd's amber eyes remained alert, scanning through the windows despite his obvious exhaustion. We can't trust dispatch, Tessa said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. If Ellery's corrupt, there's no telling how deep this goes. Her voice cracked slightly. Everything I believed in, everyone I trusted. Colin watched her struggle to maintain composure. Not everyone, he said quietly. Your mother. Chief Danner, Tessa corrected automatically, then gave a bitter laugh. Mom. She tried to warn me about Ellery years ago. I thought she was just being paranoid, too caught up in her own power struggles. She pulled the car onto a gravel turnout overlooking the valley. I should have listened. Below them, the sprawling fuel terminal complex spread out like a metal city. Storage tanks rose like silver mountains against the landscape. Workers moved between buildings like ants, completely unaware of the danger heading their way. How much time do we have? Colin asked, dreading the answer. Tessa checked her watch. Based on the truck's projected route and the activation signal from Ranger's GPS, less than 3 hours. She slammed her hand against the dashboard. And we can't even warn them. One call to the wrong person could tip off Klein's people. Ranger whined softly, pressing his nose against Colin's shoulder. The vet reached back to scratch behind the dog's ears, feeling the slight tremor in the powerful animal's body. He knows something's wrong. Dogs are sensitive to human stress. At least he's on our side, Tessa said, managing a weak smile. Unlike half the police force, apparently. They sat in heavy silence, watching the sun sink lower. The shadows of the fuel tanks stretched across the access roads like prison bars. We should keep moving, Colin suggested. Ellery knows these roads too. Where? Tessa's voice was hollow. Every safe house could be compromised, every frequency monitored, every camera hacked. She rested her forehead against the steering wheel. 3 people and a dog against a criminal empire with police protection. And somewhere out there, a truck full of explosives is heading toward hundreds of innocent workers. Colin felt the weight of their situation pressing down like a physical force. His veterinary training hadn't prepared him for this. He'd spent his life healing animals, not fighting criminals. The most dangerous thing he usually faced was an angry cat. Ranger suddenly sat up straight, ears forward. A distant engine sound carried on the wind. Down! Tessa hissed, killing the lights. They ducked below the dashboard as a black SUV cruised past their turnout, its tinted windows concealing the occupants. Klein's men, Tessa whispered. They're searching the back roads. She started the car again, keeping the lights off as she carefully backed onto a different service road. We need to stay ahead of them. The cruiser crept through deepening twilight, using only moonlight to navigate. Every set of headlights in the distance made them tense. Every radio crackle could be enemies closing in. The fuel terminal's lights blazed behind them like a false beacon. I keep thinking about Randall, Colin said after a while. How they threatened his family to control him. How many others are trapped in Klein's web. How many good people forced to do terrible things. Stop, Tessa said sharply. We can't think about that right now. We have to focus on stopping that truck. But her voice wavered. Ranger pressed between their seats, offering silent comfort. His presence reminded Colin of all the times he'd seen animals display unexpected courage. A mother cat protecting kittens, a tiny dog standing up to a threat. Size and strength weren't everything. Maybe that's our advantage, he said slowly. Klein's operation depends on corruption and fear, on people looking the other way, on systems working like they're supposed to. He turned to Tessa. But we're already outside the system. We've got nothing left to lose. Except our lives, Tessa pointed out. True, but we're not trapped by rules anymore, or chains of command, or fear of losing positions or reputations. Colin felt energy returning as he worked through the idea. We can do things they won't expect because we're not playing their game anymore. Ranger's tail thumped against the seat, as if agreeing. Tessa was silent for a long moment, considering. We'd need help, she said finally. Someone completely outside Klein's influence, someone with authority to mobilize clean officers. Her hands tightened on the wheel. Someone who's spent years documenting corruption and building a network of trusted people. Your mother, Colin said. Tessa nodded slowly. Mom, Chief Danner, the most by-the-book, rigidly ethical commanding officer in the department's history. A complex mix of emotions crossed her face. She'll help, but I'll never hear the end of it. Better than not hearing anything ever again, Colin pointed out, glancing back at the fuel terminal's glow. Yeah. Tessa took a deep breath. Okay, I know where she lives, but we'll have to be careful. If Klein's people are watching her. Another engine sound sent them ducking into the shadows of a narrow access road. 2 more SUVs passed on the main road, moving fast. They're closing the net, Tessa whispered. We need to move now. She guided the cruiser deeper into the maze of back roads and service trails. Colin kept one hand on Ranger, drawing strength from the dog's steady presence. Above them, stars began appearing in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, a truck carried destruction toward its target. Time was running out. The weight of their situation pressed down harder than ever. They were 3 small players trying to stop a massive criminal. Enterprise. No backup, no resources, no guarantee of survival. Just desperate hope. And the knowledge that they were the only ones who could prevent a tragedy. Ranger's warm fur under Colin's fingers reminded him that sometimes the smallest things could make the biggest difference, like a dog's loyalty, or a vet's determination, or a police officer's courage to defy corruption. They drove on through the gathering dark, hunted but not beaten. Not yet. The dim glow of Tessa's phone screen illuminated her face as she stared at her mother's contact information. Her thumb hovered over the call button, while doubt gnawed at her insides. 5 years had passed since their last real conversation. 5 years of stiff holiday greetings and avoided family gatherings. Colin watched her from the passenger seat, understanding in his eyes. Sometimes the hardest calls are the most important ones. Ranger's warm muzzle pressed against her shoulder from the back seat, offering silent support. Taking a deep breath, Tessa pressed the button. Each ring seemed to last forever. Chief Danner. Her mother's voice was crisp, professional, the voice of authority she'd known since childhood. Mom. Tessa's voice cracked slightly. I need your help. A pause stretched between them, heavy with unspoken history. Officer Holcomb, it's 0100 hours. This had better be important. The formal distance stung, but Tessa pressed on. It is. I'm working a case involving Detective Ellery. He's corrupt, Mom. He's working with Vernon Klein to smuggle explosives. Those are serious accusations about a decorated officer. Chief Danner's tone grew sharper. Where's your evidence? I have ultrasound images showing military-grade detonators surgically removed from a dog. The dog belonged to a man Klein's people threatened. I have recordings of Ellery deliberately misdirecting the investigation, and... Tessa swallowed hard. And I have photos of him trying to kill me 3 hours ago. Another pause, shorter this time. When Lorraine spoke again, there was a subtle shift in her voice. Are you safe? For now. We're hiding in the industrial district. But Mom, there's more. Klein has a truck loaded with explosives heading toward the fuel terminal. The detonator's already been activated. If we don't stop it... She let the implications hang in the air. We? Her mother's question was pointed. I'm with Dr. Colin Mercer, the vet who discovered the detonators, and the dog, Ranger. They saved my life when Ellery turned on us. The sound of papers rustling came through the phone. I've been building a file on internal corruption. Ellery's name has come up before, but never with concrete proof. A drawer opened and closed. Where are you exactly? Tessa gave their location, tension easing slightly at her mother's businesslike tone. This was familiar ground, the chief gathering facts, preparing to act. Stay there. I'm calling in people I trust personally, officers whose records I've vetted myself. Keys jingled in the background. And Tessa? Yes? Why didn't you come to me sooner? The question hit like a physical blow. Years of disappointment and criticism flooded back. Every time she'd failed to meet her mother's exacting standards. Every argument about proper procedure versus doing what felt right. Would you have believed me? Tessa asked quietly. Or would you have demanded forms in triplicate first? Silence stretched between them again. Then, softly, I've always believed in evidence, Tessa. But perhaps I should have believed in you more. Tears pricked at Tessa's eyes. She blinked them back, keeping her voice steady. I learned from the best, Mom. Documentation, chain of evidence, building a solid case. I just had to do it my way. Your way. There was something new in Lorraine's voice. Recognition, maybe even pride. It seems your way works too. The admission, small as it was, felt like a bridge spanning years of distance. Tessa gripped the phone tighter. Mom, I know we've had our differences, but I need you to trust me now. Lives depend on it. I do trust you. The words came without hesitation this time. And I'm already moving. I've got 4 officers I can vouch for personally heading to your location. 2 more are tracking that truck. I'm coordinating with the bomb squad directly. Relief flooded through Tessa. This was her mother in full command mode, efficient, decisive, unstoppable. The very qualities that had made her difficult to live with as a daughter made her invaluable as an ally. Thank you, Tessa whispered. Don't thank me yet. We've got work to do. Papers rustled again. I need everything you have on Klein's operation, every detail, no matter how small. For the next 20 minutes, Tessa laid out the case, her mother asking sharp, precise questions. Colin added technical details about the detonators, while Ranger's occasional soft whines punctuated the tension. Good work, Lorraine said finally. Both of you. Now listen carefully. I'm sending coordinates for a secure meeting point. My team will rendezvous there in 30 minutes. We'll need your knowledge of Klein's operation to coordinate the response. Understood. Tessa hesitated, then added, Mom, I'm sorry I didn't trust you before. And I'm sorry I gave you reason not to. Her mother's voice softened slightly. Perhaps we can work on that, after we prevent this catastrophe. Yes, Chief. And Tessa, be careful, please. The call ended, leaving Tessa staring at the dark phone screen. Beside her, Colin squeezed her shoulder gently. That couldn't have been easy, he said. Easier than I expected. Tessa squared her shoulders, professional mask sliding back into place. And harder, too. Ranger nosed between them again as she started the car, his presence a reminder of how this had all started, with a sick dog and a vet who refused to look the other way. Now they had a chance to end it, with help from the last person Tessa had expected to turn to. You know, Colin said as they pulled onto the road, Sometimes the strongest bridges are built under the most pressure. Tessa thought about her mother's voice, about the subtle changes in tone that spoke volumes to someone who'd grown up learning to read them, about trust offered and accepted when it mattered most. "Yeah," she said softly. "Sometimes they are." They drove toward the meeting point, leaving their hiding place behind. The fuel terminal's glow still lit the horizon, but it seemed less threatening now. They weren't alone anymore. They had allies, resources, and a fighting chance. And they had something else too. The beginning of healing in a relationship Tessa had thought beyond repair. Whatever happened next, that was worth holding on to. Colin's hands trembled slightly as he examined the detonator's circuitry under the harsh fluorescent lights of their temporary command post. The tiny components told a chilling story, one that made his stomach clench with fresh worry. "Look at this," he said, gesturing Tessa closer. "See how the activation sequence is tied to a specific GPS signature? That's Ranger's chip ID." Ranger lifted his head at the sound of his name, amber eyes watching them intently from his position by the door. The German Shepherd's protective instincts hadn't wavered since their escape from Ellery. Tessa leaned in, her face tight with concentration. So they used him as more than just a carrier. They actually linked the bomb to his tracking chip? Yes, it's ingenious in a horrible way. Colin pointed to the tiny display. They must have activated the sequence when Ranger passed through their facility earlier. Now the bomb is primed and waiting for the final signal. One of Lorraine's trusted officers hurried into the room, tablet in hand. Chief Danner's team has a location on the truck. It's heading north on Highway 16, about 20 minutes from the fuel terminal. Tessa's eyes met Colin's. "We have to move. Now." They rushed to Tessa's unmarked police car, Ranger vaulting into the back seat. The evening air had grown cold, carrying the sharp scent of approaching rain. As they pulled onto the highway, Colin studied the tracking data on his phone, watching the truck's red dot inch closer to disaster. "Take the next exit," he directed. "We can intercept them if we cut through Industrial Park." The car's engine roared as Tessa accelerated, taking the turn with practiced skill. Streetlights flashed past in a rhythmic pattern, casting alternating shadows across their tense faces. Ranger stood alert in the back, ears forward, sensing their urgency. "There!" Colin pointed to a massive semi-truck ahead, its white trailer gleaming under the streetlights. "That's got to be it!" Before they could close the distance, a black SUV swerved into view behind them. The window rolled down, and moonlight glinted off gunmetal. "Get down!" Tessa shouted, just as the bow first shot shattered their back window. Glass sprayed across the interior. Ranger crouched low, a deep growl rumbling in his chest. Colin ducked, heart pounding as more bullets punched through the car's frame. Tessa executed a sharp turn, trying to shake their pursuers. "Vernon's men," she said through gritted teeth. "They must have been watching the routes." Another shot cracked through the windshield, creating a spiderweb of fractures that made it difficult to see. Colin gripped the dashboard as Tessa swerved again, narrowly missing a concrete barrier. The black SUV drew alongside them, and Colin caught a glimpse of the shooter taking aim again. Suddenly, Ranger lunged forward, positioning himself between Colin and the window, his powerful body serving as a shield. The sight of the German Shepherd's protective stance sent a wave of emotion through Colin's chest. "Good boy," he whispered, even as more bullets pinged off the car's frame. Tessa jerked the wheel hard, sending them down a narrow service road. The SUV's tires squealed as it followed. Up ahead, the target truck's taillights glowed red in the darkness, getting closer to the terminal with each passing second. "We're running out of time," Colin said, checking his phone again. "The terminal's less than 10 minutes away." Rain began to fall. fat drops striking the fractured windshield and further obscuring their view. The wipers smeared water and glass fragments in jerky arcs. Behind them, the SUV's headlights blazed, drawing closer. Another volley of shots rang out. Ranger barked sharply, the sound mixing with the screech of tires and the drumming rain. Tessa wrestled with the wheel as one of their tires blew, sending them into a controlled skid. "Hang on!" she yelled, fighting to keep the car on the road. They fishtailed through an intersection, sparks flying as the rims scraped pavement. The SUV closed in, its front bumper nearly touching their rear fender. Colin could see the fuel terminal's storage tanks looming ahead, their massive shapes dark against the stormy sky. The bomb-laden truck maintained its steady course toward the facility. Every second brought them closer to catastrophe, while Vernon's men seemed determined to stop them at any cost. Rain drummed harder on the roof, and thunder rolled in the distance. Ranger pressed against Colin's seat, his fur bristling but his presence steady and reassuring. Despite the chaos and danger, the dog's unwavering loyalty gave Colin strength. They had come too far to fail now. The chase continued through the rain-slicked streets, their damaged car struggling to keep pace with both the truck ahead and the threats behind. Each flash of lightning illuminated the scene like a stark photograph, the terminal growing larger, the pursuing SUV's aggressive stance, and their own desperate race against time. Colin gripped his phone tighter, watching the GPS signals converge toward what could become ground zero. The weight of thousands of lives pressed down on them as they pursued the truck through the storm, each moment bringing them closer to either salvation or catastrophe. Thunder crashed overhead as they pushed forward into the darkness, their small team united against overwhelming odds. The terminal's lights beckoned through the rain like a countdown to disaster, while behind them, Vernon's men showed no signs of giving up the chase. The chase continued at breakneck speed through the industrial district, with Tessa's expert driving keeping them alive despite their damaged tire and compromised visibility. Every few seconds, more shots rang out from the pursuing SUV, forcing them to weave erratically. Ranger maintained his protective position, muscles tense and ready, occasionally letting out warning barks when the attackers drew too close. His presence seemed to give both Colin and Tessa an extra measure of courage as they pursued their target through the dangerous night. The fuel terminal grew larger in their view, its massive storage tanks and loading bays representing both their destination and their deadline. The bomb-laden truck maintained its steady progress toward the facility, while behind them, Vernon's men seemed determined to ensure they never reached it. Rain continued to pour down, transforming the streets into shimmering ribbons of danger. Every flash of lightning illuminated their desperate chase in stark detail. 3 vehicles locked in a deadly dance through the storm, racing toward what could become either salvation or catastrophe. The chase intensified as they entered the terminal grounds, tires screeching on wet pavement. Security gates crumpled under the truck's weight as it plowed through, with Tessa's damaged car close behind. Steam rose from the rain-slicked pavement, creating an eerie fog between the massive fuel tanks and loading stations. Ranger's ears pricked forward as gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Vernon's men had positioned themselves throughout the facility, using the maze of pipes and equipment as cover. The bomb truck skidded to a halt near the main fuel depot, its engine still running. Through the fractured windshield, Colin spotted Detective Ellery emerging from behind a tanker, his service weapon drawn. "There!" he shouted, pointing. Tessa jerked the wheel, bringing their battered car to a stop behind a concrete barrier. "Stay down!" she ordered, drawing her own weapon. "I'll handle Ellery. You find a way to that truck." Rain poured down as Tessa rolled from the car, taking cover as bullets pinged off metal surfaces around them. Ranger stayed close to Colin, hackles raised, watching for threats. They could hear sirens in the distance. Lorraine's loyal officers were coming, but they had to act now. Ellery's voice carried through the storm. "Last chance, Officer Holcomb. Walk away now." "Not happening," Tessa called back, moving tactically between pieces of equipment. Colin watched in horror as Ellery opened fire, forcing Tessa to dive behind a cluster of pipes. Steam hissed from valve joints overhead, adding to the chaos. The corrupt detective advanced, his expression cold and determined. Tessa emerged from cover, tackling Ellery just as he passed. His gun went flying as they crashed onto the wet pavement. The two officers grappled viciously, trading brutal strikes beside the exposed fuel lines. Ellery's experience showed in his calculated movements, but Tessa's younger strength and determination drove her forward. "You're done, rookie," Ellery snarled, landing a heavy punch that split Tessa's lip. She responded with a devastating combination, years of training and pent-up fury behind every strike. "That's Officer Holcomb to you." While they fought, Colin tried to plot a path to the truck. Ranger stayed pressed against his leg, growling at approaching footsteps. Through the rain and steam, he saw Randall Pierce emerge from the shadows, his face pale but determined. "Dr. Mercer," Randall called out. "I'm here to help. I have to make this right." Before Colin could respond, one of Vernon's gunmen appeared on a nearby catwalk, taking aim. Randall saw the threat and acted without hesitation. He threw himself between Colin and the shooter, taking a bullet in the shoulder with a cry of pain. "Go," Randall gasped, clutching his wound. "Stop that bomb." Colin hesitated for a split second, his medical instincts warring with the urgency of their mission. But Ranger's insistent nudge got him moving. They sprinted toward the truck while Randall crawled to safety, leaving a trail of blood on the wet pavement. Back at the fuel lines, Tessa and Ellery's fight had reached its climax. The corrupt detective had her pinned against a pipe, his forearm pressing against her throat. "Should have listened to me," he growled. "Should have stayed in your lane." Tessa's vision began to darken, but she refused to give up. She drove her knee up hard, creating just enough space to slip free. As Ellery stumbled, she swept his legs out from under him. He crashed down hard, his head striking the edge of a concrete pad. Before he could recover, Tessa was on him. She secured his arms behind his back, snapping her handcuffs into place with fierce satisfaction. "You're under arrest," she declared, pressing her knee into his back. "And I'm exactly where I belong." More gunfire erupted as Vernon's men tried to maintain control of the facility. But police sirens grew louder, and Chief Lorraine Danner's voice boomed through a megaphone. "This is the police. Drop your weapons and surrender." Through the chaos, Colin reached the bomb truck's cab. The door was locked, but Ranger's powerful jaws made quick work of the handle. Colin pulled himself up, heart pounding as he saw the complex device secured in the passenger seat. The timer displayed less than 5 minutes remaining. Rain continued to pour down as officers moved in on Vernon's men, slowly tightening the net. Tessa kept Ellery secured, watching her mother coordinate the response with fierce pride. Their eyes met briefly across the terminal grounds, a moment of understanding passing between them. Randall had managed to drag himself behind cover where medics could safely reach him. His sacrifice had given them the chance they needed, and his determined expression showed no regret for his choice. The terminal grounds became a flurry of activity as police secured the scene. Steam continued to rise from the wet pavement, mixing with the rain to create an otherworldly atmosphere. Tessa stood over the subdued Ellery, her victory complete, but her attention already turning to the next challenge. The bomb that Colin now faced in the truck's cab, with precious little time remaining. Through it all, Ranger maintained his vigilant guard, protecting his people with unwavering loyalty. The German Shepherd's presence had been crucial throughout their ordeal, and even now, he stood ready to face whatever came next. The rain began to ease, but tension remained high across the facility. Tessa had defeated one threat, but they all knew their mission wasn't over yet. The bomb's timer continued its relentless countdown, while Colin prepared himself for the delicate task ahead. The next few minutes would determine whether their victory over Ellery would matter at all. Inside the truck's cab, Colin's hands trembled as he examined the bomb's intricate wiring. The digital display showed 45 seconds remaining. Ranger sat alertly beside him, the German Shepherd's presence oddly calming despite the dire situation. "Okay, boy," Colin muttered, connecting the reprogrammed GPS unit to the detonator's receiver. "Let's hope this works." The device began to pulse erratically as Ranger's modified signal interfered with its programming. 30 seconds. Sweat beaded on Colin's forehead as he adjusted the frequency, pushing more power through the connection. 20 seconds. The detonator's casing grew hot to the touch. 15 seconds. Small wisps of smoke began curling from its circuits. Come on," Colin whispered, holding steady despite his racing heart. Ranger whined softly, pressing closer to his side. At 10 seconds, the display started flickering. 9, 8, 7, the casing was now too hot to touch. 6, 5, 4. Sparks flew from the circuitry. 3, 2, 1. With a final electronic squeal, the detonator overloaded completely. The display went dark. Colin held his breath for several eternal seconds, but the device remained inert, its critical components fried beyond recovery. The bomb had been neutralized. As the bomb's threat faded, police vehicles swarmed the terminal. Vernon Klein's composed facade finally cracked as officers led him away in handcuffs, his carefully constructed empire crumbling around him. Nearby, Detective Ellery struggled against his restraints, his badge now a symbol of betrayal rather than authority. Chief Lorraine Danner personally oversaw the arrests, her stern, expression-masking satisfaction as she read them their rights. "Mark Ellery, Vernon Klein, you're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted mass murder, and corruption of office." The evidence from Randall's recorded conversation proved devastating. His wire had captured not just Vernon's involvement, but detailed connections to corrupt officials, smuggling routes, and previous operations. In exchange for his cooperation and brave actions at the terminal, Randall received a reduced sentence with witness protection for himself and his family. At a ceremony 2 weeks later, Police Chief Danner presented commendations to Colin and Tessa. Even Ranger received a special citation for his role in averting disaster. The German Shepherd sat proudly between them, his tail wagging as cameras flashed. "Your action saved countless lives," Chief Danner announced to the gathered crowd. "This operation has dismantled one of the largest smuggling networks in our region's history." The investigation ultimately revealed over 30 collaborators across 3 states, all now facing federal charges. Vernon's freight company was seized, its legitimate operations transferred to honest management while its secret channels were permanently shut down. In the weeks following the arrests, a gentler rhythm settled over their lives. Ranger, now fully recovered from his surgery, found an unexpected but perfect home with Tessa. His protective instincts had only grown stronger through their shared ordeal, and he took to guarding her apartment with devoted attention. Colin found himself visiting more frequently, officially to check on Ranger's recovery. But his lingering glances at Tessa told a different story. Their shared experience had forged something deeper than friendship, something that made both their hearts beat faster when their hands accidentally touched while feeding Ranger treats. "He's healing beautifully," Colin said one evening, running his hands along Ranger's newly healed surgical site. "Though I think these checkups might be unnecessary at this point." Tessa smiled, her eyes soft in the fading daylight. Maybe we could still meet for coffee, without the medical excuse? Their first official date was at a small cafe where Ranger could join them on the patio. The German Shepherd lay contentedly at their feet as they talked for hours, no longer about bombs and danger, but about dreams and quiet hopes. Meanwhile, Tessa's relationship with her mother underwent its own careful healing. Chief Danner made the first move, inviting Tessa for weekly dinners. Their conversation started awkwardly, but gradually softened into genuine connection. "I always thought you were questioning my judgment," Tessa admitted during one such dinner. "But you trusted me when it mattered most." "I never doubted your instincts," Chief Danner replied, reaching across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. "I just worried too much about protecting you." Colin, too, had changed. The quiet veterinarian who once avoided confrontation now stood taller, spoke with more confidence. His experience had shown him that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about doing what was right, despite your fears. The transformation in all their lives seemed somehow reflected in Ranger's bright eyes and wagging tail, as if he'd known all along that saving him would save them all in different ways. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.